This is a Film Stories original podcast.
If you own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles and have an auto warranty about to expire or no warranty coverage at all, listen up. CarShield has a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that covers more parts than ever. Visit carshield.com/audio to find out how you could pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Get your free quote today at carshield.com/audio. That's carshield.com/audio.
We made this.
Welcome back, everybody, to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. This is Carl Sweeney, of course. I'm sat here with Sarah Blair and Kurt North, and we're here to talk about another reopened file. We're re-airing an old episode for you this week. And this week it's Kurt's choice. So I think Sarah and I have no idea what he's going to pick. So we're in suspense. Kurt, what have you gone for?
On the edge of my seat, literally.
Yeah. Let's put this into some context, shall we? So I came late to this party. I was at work, and Sarah and Carl had already had their choices chosen. I think has Tony mentioned that he might be doing one as well, or something like that. But anyway, Tony had sent a message saying, "Oh, that's great, Kurt. Can you pick an episode? It can't be in seasons 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11." So I was like, "Well, season 4 then." No, but it was something along those lines.
You were restricted on your choice, weren't you? You had a few parameters you had to negotiate.
I did, and I've been quite a busy chap, so I've just decided not long ago. Actually, I was thinking about the choices that you've made, and I thought I'd go with one that you did, Carl, for a couple of reasons, really. I remember listening to this episode in a McDonald's car park. For some strange reason, I don't know why that happened, but I remember really enjoying it. And also the fact that we are moving into season 8, where we're going to get limited appearances by David Duchovny. So I thought I'd go for something that was a David Duchovny heavy episode, and that would be Paper Hearts that you did with Benjamin Van Allen. So that's the choice that I've made.
Yeah, I think it's a good choice. I think I remember really enjoying recording this one. Obviously, Ben Van Allen, who had written an episode of season 11, Familiar, which I think I'd already talked to him about that previously. I think not long after that episode aired. And then we got him back to talk about what I think is one of his favourites, Paper Hearts. So, yeah, really enjoyed recording it. I think we also did, if people want to go and do a bit of digging, I think I did an episode with Chris Knowles as well, kind of a supplemental about Paper Hearts at around the same time, which people might also want to check out. But yeah, Sarah, it's a classic episode, isn't it, Paper Hearts? Is it one of your favourites?
It is. I love that episode. I think it's a really good character episode on Mulder and one of the classics. So yeah, good choice. Good choice, Kurt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I think without any further ado then, let's go ahead and listen to this reopened file.
Hi, my name is Benjamin Van Allen. I wrote episode 8, Familiar, of season 11 of The X-Files, and you're listening to The X-Cast.
Welcome back, everybody, to the X-Cast. As ever, the truth is in here. I'm your host today, Carl Sweeney, and thanks for joining me for this episode, which is the first of 2 episodes we're doing this year, all about Paper Hearts, the season 4 classic, of course. Yeah, so today we're taking a general look at the episode, and then in a few days, hopefully you'll hear another episode I've done. I've already recorded the second episode, actually, which is with Chris Knowles, where he talks about the symbolism that he sees in the episode, and that's a good one, so hopefully you'll all tune back in for that. But today I'm joined by a man making his second appearance on the podcast, the writer of Season 11's Familiar, Ben Van Allen. Hi, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, not bad. It's good to speak to you again. It's almost a year to the day, actually, it looks like, since we spoke about Season 11. Yeah, so how time flies, you know?
Yeah, it's nice to be back.
Yes, so I guess people will be curious about, what you're up to these days, what you're working on at the moment. Obviously since season 11 is now firmly in the rearview mirror, isn't it? So yeah, what are you up to these days?
Yeah, just looking towards the next thing. I've been writing a bunch of, spec stuff on my own that I'm trying to get sold right now. Yeah, I'm working on a comic book, which I can plug towards the end of the episode. I can give people a link to that. But, just keeping busy. I'm not on a show right now. Staffing season's going on right now. Fingers crossed you get on something. But we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, good stuff. And so what about, since we last spoke, I think all the Disney Fox news was kind of in the offing, and now it's kind of gone through, hasn't it? So I don't know, any X-Files rumours on the grapevine you've been able to share with us, or you've heard?
Not yet. Hopefully we'll hear something soon. This Fox-Disney merger just happened, so I'm sure they're kind of busy going through, a bunch of business management stuff right now. A bunch of people just got fired, I think. So we'll see how things shake out, and hopefully something happens soon.
Yeah.
If we're a part of it or not, I hope there's more X-Files in the future.
Yeah, I like to say still early days, isn't it, on the next step of Disney's road to world domination.
Yeah. I was wondering if X-Files will end up on Disney Plus or if we're going to stay on Hulu. I have no idea how that's going to work.
Yeah, I know some fans are already claiming Scully as a Disney princess, but that's maybe another discussion. Anyway, so good to have you here. So we're talking about Paper Hearts, which is the 10th episode of Season 4. Originally aired on the 15th of December 1996, actually the last episode before Christmas that year. Written by Vince Gilligan, the great Vince Gilligan, and directed by the great Rob Bowman. And this, of course, is the episode in which Mulder comes to suspect that an imprisoned killer may have been responsible for his sister's unexplained disappearance. So yeah, Ben, I think you mentioned to me before online, did you say this is the first time rewatching this that you'd watch this one in a good while?
Yeah, I probably saw it like way back in the 90s the first time, but or early 2000s, sometime I caught it during a rerun, I think. But when I was preparing to write my episode for season 11, I went back and I was binge watching like all the episodes, and I just remember, I was, you know what you do when you binge watch a bunch of things. You're like folding laundry or half watching the television. And when this one came on, I just got sucked in. I don't know why I loved it so much. I think it's a lot. Most of the X-Files have like some sort of sci-fi element or monster in it or something. They're like popcorn crunching episodes where, they're just really fun to watch. But this one got really serious and really dark, like very quickly. And there's something about the episode that feels like very unique, even for the X-Files, which has a bunch of unique episodes. The music is really amazing. It's really like, it's almost like playful and whimsical for such a dark episode. And Mulder's acting, or Duchovny's acting in it is so good. It's just a really good overall episode. And I rewatched it yesterday in preparation for this podcast, and I was a little worried because like last time I'd seen it was in 2017, a couple years ago. Yeah, I was worried that I wouldn't like it as much this next go around, but it really holds up. It's a really solid, great episode.
Yeah, it really is, and that's basically the consensus on this one. It's a very popular episode across the board, it seems. Popular people who've worked on the series always speak highly of this one, and fans and so on. So yeah, if I can push you, we normally do like a marks out of 10 for each episode. How highly does this score then? Is it right up there? Yeah,
I'd give this a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm going to join you on that because I've been a bit harsh on a couple of episodes recently. And no, it has to be a 10, I think. I love this episode. It's very well done.
There's a couple things in it that, I'm still giving it a 10 out of 10 for sure, but we can get into a couple odd things in the episode later.
Well, there is one that sometimes comes up, and the people who love this episode normally say, it's great. There's this one little thing. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if we're speaking about the same thing when we get there.
Okay.
What do you make of like Vince Gilligan then? Because everybody's massively impressed, it seems, by his talent. Obviously, best known these days, I guess, as the showrunner on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. But very highly regarded amongst X-Files fans as well, and especially, I guess, season 4 was the year he really took off when he started to write multiple scripts and he was doing very different things episode to episode. Do you sort of share in the general admiration for Gilligan?
Yeah, for sure. He's such a great character writer, and I'm trying to think back on all of his X-Files episodes, and maybe you can help me out. Yeah. But a lot of his episodes are a little lighthearted and a little humorous, I feel like. Yeah. And then this one was just so dark, and obviously this was way before Breaking Bad, but I think this was a little teaser into how dark Vince Gilligan can get.
No, you're right, because he seems to be able to go to both ends of the spectrum, really. That some of the funniest kind of slapstick comedy episodes are his. So there's one, Bad Blood, which is where...
Yes, I love that one.
Yeah, everyone seems to like that one, where you get both sides of the case from Mulder and Scully's perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some other very light-hearted ones too, and then stuff like this, which is very grim.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you think of somebody who wrote that episode Familiar, which was trafficking in some dark subject matter? This is very tasteful, isn't it? It doesn't sort of exploit it. It does it in a very nice way, I thought.
No, and I read on Wikipedia that originally they wanted, when Vince was writing this episode, he wanted to figure out some kind of trophy for the serial killer to take. And they ended up going with the paper hearts out of the clothes because taking something off the body was a little too dark, especially for network television at this time.
Yeah.
But I kind of like they didn't go that direction because I think the hearts out of the clothes was so, I'd never seen that before. I think that's really unique, and just taking a body part, like maybe that wasn't seen a lot in the 90s, but definitely now we've seen people take body parts in movies and TV shows since then. So I'm kind of happy that they didn't go that direction.
Yeah, and I think you never sort of lose sight of the human sort of cost on, the loss. The sense of loss goes through this episode very profoundly, I think.
Yeah, and you were talking about Familiar. I didn't even actually realize this until yesterday when I was rewatching the episode. Yeah. That I don't know what this says about me, but for Familiar, very quickly I went to the idea of kids being killed and little kids being taken, and that happens also here in Paper Hearts, and maybe that's one of the reasons why I love this episode. I don't know. There's something. I think we've seen. I mentioned this in our last interview. I think we've seen so much in TV and movies that it's hard to get like shocked anymore. And recently, I've been finding when things involve the death of little children, it's just like it's so tragic. You actually pay attention more and you watch more, and you're more invested in the story and you're more invested in the characters because of the loss of such innocent life. Whereas if an adult were to die, it's just like, okay, we've seen that in everything. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it's still kind of. I don't know if it's taboo, but it's still very something very primal about it. The kind of feelings it conjures up, isn't it? I think.
Right. Yeah, I got a little pushback from Fox even now, and it was 2017 when I pitched my episode. They gave me a little pushback on killing so many kids. They were even like, why don't we kill like one kid, but do we have to kill two kids?
So like quick tangent, I guess, but. When you hear writers interviewed normally, the sort of, or it can be that the relationship with Fox or the censors or whoever it happens to be can be quite an adversarial one sometimes, where the writer's just got this artistic vision that needs to go up on the screen, and it seems like the censors are kind of knocking it back. But in reality, is it more of a professional kind of understanding that emerges, in your experience anyway? How did that kind of work in practice?
Yeah, it's super professional. I mean, you always hear about writers saying, they hate network notes and network notes are terrible. But, one thing I've learned from Chris is Chris always said, eventually, maybe it doesn't seem like it at the start, but eventually the network notes always end up making, I wouldn't say always, but he said that a lot of the time they end up making the episode better. And sometimes you hear from writers, they say you got to figure out the note behind the note, which is, maybe the note they're giving you isn't actually what they want, and you can kind of figure out where that note is coming from and fix something that'll help them, see what you're trying to do. But, eventually they're very easy to work with, especially on something like the X-Files. I could see them giving more pushback on a new series, but, something like the X-Files, they gave us notes and we, took them under advisement and did what we could to help them out. But something like that note about not killing two kids, it was very professional. They were like, do we have to kill two kids or can we just kill one? It's a little dark. And then, Chris and I and Gabe Rotter, the producer, we just explained to them why it was important that two kids die in the episode. And it was very short and they understood why and they let us do it. So it was very professional. It's not hostile at all.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear it's a constructive thing rather than the kind of caricatured view of it sometimes here.
Yeah, it's just creative problem solving.
So before we go through this episode more in depth, so we normally have a look at the IMDb response to each episode. There's normally a few thousand viewers who've rated each episode. So this one gets an 8.9 out of 10 on IMDb from just under 3,000 votes. And it's
pretty high.
Yeah, it is pretty high. It's actually the fourth highest rated episode of season 4. So there are kind of a handful this season. Episodes like Home, which are really highly regarded amongst the fans when you look at the entire run of the series.
Season 4 is a really good season.
I was just wondering about your attitude to things like IMDb or whatever it is, fan responses, professional reviews, stuff like that. Does that kind of thing matter to you? Did it matter to you for Familiar, or is it just kind of noise, background noise that doesn't really mean much?
No, I love it. I love, especially when it's something like the X-Files, that I was coming into this with a huge fan base already behind it, before I was ever even involved in this show. So, there was people that loved my episode, and then there's some people that hated my episode, but like there's some X-Files episodes I like other than others too. Everything's subjective, so all the power to you. whatever someone likes and doesn't like, that's not really my problem. I just wrote an episode that I wanted to write, and I think the fan response is great. And to be able to hear that somebody really loved your episode, who's been a lifelong X-Files fan, when I'm just coming into this brand new, was super rewarding. And, there are some people that can be really mean when they're being critical, but that kind of stuff you just kind of have to ignore. Like, the internet can be a terrible place, but I'd say overall it's a positive thing having fans interact with shows and showrunners and writers on the internet and writing reviews. Like, I love it. I love all that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, isn't it? If you can ignore whatever, like the most eccentric 10% or whatever it is, most hostile 10% perhaps.
And usually the most hostile have the loudest voices on the internet, but
yeah, that's another subject, isn't it? It does tend to get amplified, doesn't it, sadly?
Yeah.
In all sorts of spheres, not just like TV shows, but politics or whatever it is. Ben, let's take a closer look at Paper Hearts. Okay, so the teaser sequence. So we get Mulder asleep, don't we? This red light we see that we're going to see all through the episode. And
right.
you mentioned like the playfulness of Mark Snow's score, and that's definitely true, isn't it? Especially in this early stages. It's got this like fairy tale, whimsical quality to it, which is really effective, I think.
Right, yeah, it's really playful. And you think, like when this episode started out, just listening to the music and Mulder's having this dream, and there's like this laser pointer he's following, it seems very lighthearted and playful. Till we get to the end of the teaser and it gets super dark, like really quickly. Like, I don't know if you want to go through how it ends, but
well, yeah, just in a nutshell. So we see the words, don't we? The red light changes into like follow and Mad Hat, and all about this girl's body in the leaves that we see, which kind of sinks into the ground. Mulder wakes up and he seeks out this park, finds a spot. And ultimately, in daytime, when Scully turns up, they find that skull in the soil, don't they? Or the investigators do, I should say. So yeah, it's a very effective way in, isn't it? I think it tees things up nicely for the remainder of the episode.
Yeah, I mean, that was super scary, I thought, when he finds the girl in the leaves and then she gets sucked down into the ground. I can just imagine watching that for the very first time, and you just have this whimsical music with Mulder, like, following this laser pointer, walking through the woods, and then all of a sudden you see this girl sucked into the earth. That it got like super dark really fast. Yeah,
so I guess overall then, I mean, what's your feeling of like the importance of a teaser in this kind of procedural series? They do tend to stand out, don't they? They do tend to be things fans discuss. So I guess it must be very important. Is that your impression too?
Yeah, I love the teaser. The X-Files always had a teaser, so there's not really... I mean, maybe you could tell me. I don't think there is an X-Files episode that doesn't have a teaser. I think just the structure of the episode and the way the commercial breaks work. Yeah. There always was a teaser that happened before the credit sequence, the opening credit sequence. But even in other shows that aren't procedural, like Breaking Bad, always had a teaser. And some of Breaking Bad's teasers were amazing, and I think they really help television. And every TV script that I write has a teaser, like every spec pilot episode that I write for an original show, I put teasers into. So I really love teasers, and I think they do great things for episodes.
Yeah, Breaking Bad did great stuff, didn't it? Where it would play around with flashbacks and things, or show you things you hadn't seen before,
right?
In the chronology and so on. Yeah, I think X-Files, I think the pilot episode, they hadn't got the opening credits ready, so it's got kind of a teaser sequence. You just don't get the theme music and so on.
Yeah. It ended with the teaser ended with the girl in the woods, right?
That's correct, yeah. All right, so then after the teaser, at the crime scene, so Mulder and Scully talk about the dream a bit more. So this recurring dream motif through the episode. Also, that moment I really like is when Mulder gets really hands-on trying to help out. And it's what you said, I think, David Duchovny, this is maybe one, it's one of his very best performances, I think. And he's asked to do a lot, isn't he? I think that, when he was handed this script, it's a great opportunity, I suppose, as well as a great challenge, I think.
It's very much his episode. Scully kind of takes a back seat in this episode. One thing I did notice is there's very X-Files Scully-ish dialogue in this episode. There's a lot of so you're saying, Mulder, you know what I mean? Like Scully has to interpret speak to the audience and interpret everything that he's saying. But yeah, it's very much his episode, and he takes the driver's seat here.
Yeah, he's so good. I mean, he really is. And you get some great scenes all the way through, really, which we'll talk about. And in this one, he talks about John Lee Roach, who we'll meet a bit later. So the episode is quite good, actually, I think. There are all these different elements that come through, but it doesn't really front load them. Do you know what I mean? Like, the teaser doesn't give much away, and we sort of ease into it, don't we? The various twists and turns. Yeah,
for sure. We don't really know exactly what's going on. And it's an odd X-File because the X-File-ish part of it is very subtle. We don't know if he, obviously because it's an X-File, we think there's more to this than just his subconscious telling him things from the past that he figured out in his sleep about this case. But we can get into that later because even by the end of the episode, you're left a little confused about was this magical or not? You know what I mean?
I think that the crux of it is the whole psychic nexus, isn't it, between Mulder and Roach is the kind of thing they pass over quite quickly.
Yeah. It's almost like they were like, well, let's just tell this great, serial killer type story, and then like, oh, this is an X-File, so let's just kind of like put this X-File-y stuff in it a little bit,
Yeah, well, this season, actually, since the second season, I suppose, there'd been these episodes that come up about serial killers, and of course, Carter's other series, Millennium, starts during season 4 of the X-Files. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like it takes the series, sometimes there's an episode like this, which you could see being adapted to be a Millennium episode with some alterations, but it would be doable, is what I mean. Have you seen Millennium? Are you up to speed with that series as well?
I want to say I saw most of the first season, and I've heard multiple things. Some people love season 2, some people hate season 2, but I'd like to continue watching it. It's just, those are like those 20, 22, 20, 23 episode seasons.
Yeah. No, you're right, though, that it tends to be that fans either have a clear preference for season 1 or season 2, which are very different.
Yeah, I remember I stopped watching it just because of time. Something came up, but, the season 1 of Millennium is very, very, very procedural until towards the end of the season when they start bringing in some mythology towards the very end. And that's when it really gets interesting, but unfortunately, I haven't watched past that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the way they go in season 2, is they develop those kinds of elements even further. But I think the series is just very grim, isn't it? It's a hard one to binge.
I loved it. It was. I love that.
Yeah,
they should bring Millennium back. I'd love to write on a Millennium reboot.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm not sure if that fits the Disney profile quite as much as X-Files.
Right,
maybe.
Right.
So there's a scene in the X-Files office. It sort of fills in some of the backstory. It's always nice when we get references to Mulder's time as a criminal profiler before he worked on the X-Files.
Mm-hmm.
And Gilligan's actually, he sort of seems to seed his episodes with little bits that a fan will appreciate. So there's a reference here to a character called Reggie Perdue, who was Mulder's boss in a season 1 episode we met briefly.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not obtrusive though. It doesn't feel like fan service. He seems to weave in these little things quite nicely into his scripts. I think it happens all across the board in his episodes. I think. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. Was there an episode where a lone gunman episode where they go in the past or something, and Mulder answers the phone and says, "Hey, Reggie."
That's the one. Well,
okay, that's the one. And I think in season 11,
in
a Darren Morgan episode, he has Mulder answer a phone or something and say, "Hey, Reggie."
That's right, because it's the forehead sweat episode, isn't it? It's
yeah.
That character Reggie who believes they were partners. Yeah, no, he used that clip nicely. That was a nice in-joke, yeah. And the Reggie character had appeared in another season 1 episode, I think, is where this one goes back to. So what happened? So Scully suggests that Mulder processed the information to solve the case in his dream, and there's this open question, like there's these missing hearts, the cloth hearts, like you say, is a really nice touch. Do they really add up to 13? and they autopsy that skeleton and they find, the identity of this victim, Addie Sparks. And I love that scene where they go to inform her father, I mean, I don't know who that actor is. It's, possible I've seen him in other stuff, but I can't quite remember. But I thought the father, the guy playing the father, just very convincing, very anguished. And it's what we were saying, isn't it? This kind of thing's very primal and an unimaginable situation to be in, I think.
Yeah, it got serious. No matter how serious and dark the X-Files gets with its sci-fi stuff and its monster stuff, there's just something about a father talking about his dead daughter that, it's a different type of seriousness, and it really grounds the episode more than other episodes, I think. Yeah,
in the real world, in real emotions and so on. Yeah.
Right.
So Mulder makes this classic Mulder link, like a leap of logic about Roach's car.
Yes,
the hearts might be there. They have a look. The Mad Hat is what he realizes. So he realizes the hearts are in the camper shell.
Yeah, back to Mulder being a terrible FBI agent. He's like, all throughout this episode, he's like digging in the dirt, like the forensic investigators are telling him to stop, and he's just not listening to them, like just ruining evidence. And then he he finds this kid who has this car. I don't know if they had a warrant or not. I can't remember in the episode, but he just goes and he takes a knife and just starts cutting into the dude's car, like no warrant or anything.
It's like if he was a real character,
he'd be fired.
He'd just be a nightmare to work with, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Isn't it? And it's such a classic X-Files episode because I can't remember when in the story this happens, but there's even like a scene where it cuts to Skinner like yelling at Mulder. Like everything you want in like a good X-Files episode is in this episode.
What do you feel about the level of humor here? Because it's not pushed too much, is there? But there are these characters like the guy who owns the car, who it's not that they're a comic character, but they're a little more lighthearted than the episode around it. And yeah, I never felt like it was badly done or overly distracting or anything like that. But there are these little moments of levity, I think, aren't there?
Yeah, and I think that's important, especially when you have a dark episode like this. You do want, you need a little bit of lighthearted humor in between the dark moments, or else it's just, it turns into a Millennium episode.
Is there kind of a formula to it, though? Or I guess it's just on feel, isn't it? That, a certain amount of humor
needs
to
I wouldn't
be kind
say
of sprinkled in. Yeah.
There would be a strict formula. It's more just about like feeling and flow, you just see how the story's going, and wherever you can put in a little bit of lightness between the dark, I think it's smart to do that. And Vince always does a great job doing that. All of his, Breaking Bad and everything was, a lot of humor in Breaking Bad between the super dark moments.
And also, you mentioned last time as well about like David Duchovny taking any opportunity to like ad lib a line here or a line there.
I think he missed his calling. He started off X-Files and as a drama actor, but I think he would have had an amazing comedy career if he went that direction. He's so funny. I guess you can see in what was that show he had recently that just ended?
Was that Aquarius or?
Oh no, Californication.
Californication, yeah.
He is so good in Californication. When you meet Duchovny and when you talk with him, he is way more in real life his character on Californication than he is Mulder. As much as X-Files fans will hate to hear this, he's very much he's just hilarious, and he's like from he's a Malibu type guy, even though he lives in New York, but he also has a house in Malibu, and he's very just like I don't know. He's a great dude, but he's definitely not as serious a person as Mulder is.
Well, no, I think that's good. That's probably a good thing to hear, isn't it? Because Mulder can be blinkered and, all that kind of thing. Yeah, so then we get the stuff at the prison, don't we? Roach playing basketball. And, yeah, just Tom Noonan, brilliant, I think. What did you make of his performance?
He's amazing. I read that this episode was written specifically for him. I don't know if that's true, but I read that on Wikipedia. He's so creepy. He's such a good actor. And I read also for that scene that he is a really good basketball player.
Yeah.
And I think, unless I'm getting this backwards, I know Duchovny played basketball also, but I heard when they were doing that scene, I don't know if it was a joke or not, but they told him to like tone down his basketball skills for, for Duchovny, and then they got that one where Duchovny shoots the basket. Yeah. They got that in one take, which was pretty cool.
I mean, call me cynical, but I've always been skeptical of that story, the one take. I mean, I'd like to... No, I'll take the word for it, though. Yeah, Tom Noonan, so he'd played... I mean, the reason why it would have been written for him, I think... I mean, the role that's most obvious, a forerunner of this, he played Francis Dolarhyde in Michael Mann's Manhunter, which was the first adaptation of Thomas Harris's Red Dragon. But a good actor generally. He'd also been in Michael Mann's Heat not long before this, so he seemed to have been in a lot of like crime stuff associated with that kind of role, you know. I mean, he's still around, still very active, still a very compelling actor. He was in a Charlie Kaufman film a few years ago called Anomalisa, which I thought was very good. But he's not kind of swinging for the fences with this performance, is he? He doesn't push it over the top at any point, which is what I really appreciated, I think.
No, he's all his acting in this is really subtle, and I think that's also what lends to the creep factor, you know?
Yeah, it's not like this is a character from a slasher film or something that's a bit more removed from reality, is it? It's like this is a guy you could actually meet. I could imagine buying a vacuum cleaner off this guy. Do you know what I mean? He's got that grounded quality. You know?
He is a vacuum cleaner salesman. I forgot about that.
Yeah, and so what does he say? Sort of bring me the hearts is basically what he's pushing for, isn't he, at this point?
Yeah.
And then the episode takes this funny turn, or it takes this interesting turn, let's say. So it's Mulder asleep at his desk. And then the red light leads him back into the 1973 Samantha Mulder abduction scene, but with a twist, of course. So, yeah, what I like about this, I mean, several things, but I like the way, like we said, it kind of backs into this quite smoothly, doesn't it? So I don't know exactly what time it was, but it was, let's say, 15 minutes into the episode before the Samantha stuff comes in. So it was done quite well, I thought, in that respect.
Yeah, I can only imagine watching this when it aired, because there's nothing... For me, I don't think that I didn't think it was going to be a Samantha episode until that act break. I think it's the act 1 break, maybe, where all of a sudden it takes a turn into Mulder's personal life, and it gave me chills. I was like, holy crap, you know what I mean? I think they did a really good job holding off that reveal, so it's a surprise.
Yeah, I'm not sure if... Cause I can't remember how this episode was marketed. It'd be interesting to go back and look at the advertising and the promos and just see whether they flagged that up or not. I'm guessing they might have done, but I don't quite know.
Probably.
Yeah. What's your sense of like the Samantha Mulder storyline in general? Because I think at this point of the series, so season 4, it's still a very pivotal motivation for Mulder, and it seems to kind of ebb and flow a bit. You know, you'll go quite a long run of episodes without Samantha being referred to in the future. Ultimately, it's wrapped up in season 7. But yeah, when you were rewatching the series, I guess you were watching them all out of order the first time. So was the Samantha storyline something you really kind of keyed into? Or?
Trying to remember what we knew about Samantha leading up to this episode. But knowing how crazy it got with the Samantha story later on, when this episode aired, I think it's a very appropriate episode.
Yeah.
And I feel like the audience watching it, there's probably a lot of them who thought, oh, maybe this is really what happened to her, you know, especially when we get into how the episode ends. Obviously, we know that's not what happened to her later. Yeah, I think this is a great Samantha episode, especially for the time that it aired in the story arc of Samantha.
Yeah, one of the best. Well, the best, quite possibly, I think. Yeah. It would be interesting to know what the initial responses were, whether people were sort of taken in on first viewing. I don't know, but the great thing is it doesn't really lose anything when you know it's, when you know the story and you go back to this episode. I think it still works really well. And young Roach. So in the flashback, we see he takes Samantha as the twist, of course, which leads us to that interrogation scene. Again, it's a great two-hander, I think. Mulder and Roach, both actors so good. There's that moment, isn't there, where Mulder punches him.
Yeah, another Mulder being a terrible FBI agent. Now he has this information where he thinks he took Samantha, and he just walks right in there and accuses him of it. You know, there's no like interview or anything where they're going to try and trick him or find out the truth. He just walks in and like throws all his cards on the table, which is something an interviewer would never do. But it's a very classic Mulder moment, you know. And Scully actually like reprimands him later, saying he's too emotional. You know, he's too close to the case. But even though she in the Skinner scene later, she kind of goes back on what she just said. Yeah, he just punches him right in the face.
Yeah. And in terms of Scully, like one of my favourite moments, I think, is when they walk out in the hall after that interrogation, and Mulder asks her, have you ever believed Samantha was taken by aliens?
Right.
And she's such a principled character, I guess. She can't truthfully answer yes, can she? And of course, it's just desperately sad. You sort of see the expression change on her face and so on. So yeah, I mean, Duchovny is the obvious one, but Gillian Anderson's excellent too, isn't she, I think?
Yeah, she's always good.
Yeah, very reliable. So, and in terms of this thing with Mulder and Scully. So yeah, it's that Skinner scene later on. You sort of see Mulder's face change when Scully starts to say, "Yeah, actually, the evidence does seem to be pointing to Roach's story." You know, so you sort of see the importance Mulder attaches to what she says.
Mm-hmm.
So what's it like writing Mulder and Scully? I guess one of the interesting things about writing them must be that you can sort of boil them down to their basic archetypal positions, can't you? The sort of believer skeptic thing. But in an episode like this, you see they're also very well-rounded characters too, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think that's a testament to Vince's writing. Like you do have to fit to the X-Files paradigm where, you know, Mulder's always right and Scully, you know, although she is, you know, the scientist, she grounds every episode. In a lot of episodes, she does take the back seat just because of the way that the X-Files works. And there is that weird thing where Scully has, like, you know, in certain episodes she's seen so much and then kind of forgets what she's seen because she's always, you know,
the show has to continue.
But I think Vince did a good job in this episode, kind of keeping the paradigm, keeping the characters truthful to who they are, but at the same time, you know, making them a little more real. A little more knowledgeable of what they've known and what they've seen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because sometimes you get, especially when you go back and watch old series, or you know, or like a series like this from the 90s. Characters will go through events which are quite traumatic.
Yeah,
and then you turn up the next week, and often they're kind of minimized or played down, or not even referred to at all.
Well, it's like the whole Samantha thing. Like,
yeah,
you'll have episodes where it starts and Mulder's he's like on a vendetta or something. He's like so worried about Samantha, and then the next episode it's like she doesn't even exist, you know? Well,
it's even broader than that, where like what they're actually investigating in the conspiracy episodes is like the alien takeover of the Earth, and then
the next episode it's like, oh, nothing's happening at all. We're just in this small town looking at this thing. But that's another reason why I think this episode's so good, is it doesn't start out with a Samantha thing. You know, we get into it 15 minutes in, which makes it seem more natural, you know?
So do you feel like we've said, this slightly old-fashioned procedural thing where you can alternate between an ongoing story and then a more independent standalone thing? Do you think it's a bit kind of... because obviously the great thing about seasons 10 and 11 is it tried to recreate that, or it did recreate that for the revival. Is it old-fashioned in a good way? I mean, most TV shows, like we talked about Breaking Bad, which had very few completely standalone episodes, did it? It had that one with the fly in the factory or whatever.
Which is a very, some people hate it, some people love it.
Very divisive, yeah. But that kind of mode of storytelling, is it a bad thing that it's kind of fallen by the wayside? Is it just the way things evolve, you know?
I don't know. It's subjective. I like serialized storytelling way better, just because I want to get sucked into one story and a character. And I think with serialized storytelling, you can really kind of dive deep into a character more than you could in a procedural. And I don't watch many procedurals, but there are people who do, so I don't really want to knock it because, you know, Law and Order is still going strong, and you know, all the NCISs and the CSIs are all still going strong. So there is a definite place for it, and you even have shows now, and I can't tell you how they balance the scales with procedural and serialized, because I think a lot of procedural shows nowadays do tie in a little more serialized elements into them. But you do have shows on like MacGyver's on right now that runs like 20 episodes a season, and that's a standalone show. So I don't know, there's a bunch out there, so I don't really want to knock them. But for me personally, and I think for a lot of audiences, they enjoy serialized television more than procedural television.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I guess what I was thinking too is, like, is there anything inherent about the X-Files that means it has to be this blend of Monster in a Week and conspiracy? Or is there any reason the X-Files couldn't come back for a reboot or something and just be pure serialized storytelling? Do you know what I mean?
You know, there's always fan expectations, and I think there are probably some X-Files fans out there that would love a serialized X-Files season, but there's others who would hate it, and you know, X-Files fans have always been on each side of that coin. So I think there is a place in the X-Files universe for both modes of storytelling, but traditionally I think X-Files works better in a procedural format because, at least for me, I want all the different weird cases. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to watch like one alien case for like a whole season. You know, I want to see all the different cool monsters and all the different modes of storytelling that all the unique writers have to tell. So personally, I think the X-Files works best in a procedural type format.
Yeah, I think most people would go along with that, to be fair. And in terms of the continuity in this episode, so we see Mrs. Mulder. There's a reference. She had a stroke at the end of the previous season. That's what they talk about when she says her memory wasn't as good anymore. And yeah, vintage Skinner, as you kind of already mentioned. But the line that jumps out to me is, "You're lucky I don't have your ass in a sling."
Yeah.
And he also chews out Scully in a later scene, I think that is. But yeah, Mitch Pileggi's just very good, isn't he, at being the stern, authoritative taskmaster at that kind of exchange, isn't he? That's kind of his forte.
And he hasn't changed at all. All the way up into season 11, he's doing the exact same Skinner stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like his character arc is so funny. Like, even though he becomes like an ally of the X-Files unit and like an ally of Mulder, like he's still yelling at him all the time. He's like their dad. He's their stern dad.
Yeah, and this thing where like where exactly does he stand is the thing that they go through it again and again.
And he's never gotten promoted after all this time. He's like always the assistant director Skinner.
Yeah, as after 25 years or whatever it is. Yeah, as they sort of talk about it, don't they, in Kitten in season 11?
Yes, exactly.
And they sort of tie it in. They say it's because he's been Mulder and Scully's advocate. It's kind of pampered him and stuff like that. Yeah,
right, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and nice to see. Well, yeah, he used well in this episode in particular, I think, in the scenes he does get. So yeah, Mulder and Scully, like we said, it's his ordinariness, isn't it, Roach? When they go and see him and he tells that story of the night of Samantha's abduction, very matter-of-factly. It's not like you can tell he's enjoying it, but it's not like he's like drooling from the mouth, you know what I mean? Or
right. You can tell he's just trying to get a rise out of out of Mulder almost. And that's where this episode delves a little more into the X-Files part of it. Like, how does he know all these details? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and this is what we're building up to, I think, you know, is Mulder's revelation later, or the moment of insight he has as to what's going on. So they have that moment where they find another victim. It's not Samantha. So, you know, Mulder's obviously naturally is very relieved.
Right.
But very quickly comes back to, you know, well, it is someone, you know, which I thought was very well done. So yeah, it's like I said earlier, I think the episode never loses sight that these are real victims within the story. You know, they're not just plot devices. I think it's set up well in that respect.
Also, he's burying these bodies in the loosest dirt ever. Like when they're digging through the dirt, it's like so loose. It's like garden soil.
In terms of Mulder as the worst FBI agent ever, then, so this is where he arranges to take Roach out of prison in order to move the investigation along, isn't it? You know, Roach talks to the young girl on the plane, I think, which is very unsettling. We sort of know where that's going immediately, don't we, when we see that exchange, I think. Yeah.
Like, can you imagine, not to get to the end of the episode, but can you imagine, like, how the episode ends, like, after Mulder had, like, brought him out of like, Mulder would be, like, jailed for what he did. You know what I mean? How bad that went. He took him out of prison without getting any authority. The dude escaped, captured a little girl, and then Mulder had to shoot him in the head. Like, Mulder would be put in jail for that.
Yeah, there'd be a lengthy investigation. He'd be suspended. He'd be out the FBI at the end of it. You suspect,
for sure. So
it goes back. This is the kind of 90s storytelling, perhaps, isn't it? That it was a bit more acceptable in those days, wasn't it, to have elements like that? That I guess it's just the pure momentum of this episode. You know, we're not supposed to stop and think about that, are we?
No, it makes great TV. Yeah, and I wouldn't have them change anything about that episode. And like, even nowadays, if we were to write an episode like this, we probably would have gone a direction like that. You know, it's like, it's just funny, the difference between what makes a good TV show and what would happen in real life. But yeah, I don't blame them for taking that direction in the story at all. It makes a way better episode than some alternatives.
Yeah, where he follows procedure.
Yeah, exactly. That would be really, really boring.
Roach stays in prison. The investigation never moves forward. Yeah.
Right, yeah.
I mean, it means we get that great scene at the house where, you know, Mulder just lets Roach talk it out, doesn't he, for a while, and then pulls the rug out from under him at the end of it. Wrong house. Yeah. That's a great moment. It kind of makes you want to punch the air in solidarity with Mulder or something, I think. Just there's a real satisfaction in having Roach kind of brought down like that.
And I don't know if it's that scene, but they go a little further into the X-File-y part where doesn't Mulder say something about their shared subconscious or something? But then Roach doesn't really say anything about it from what I can remember. So it's kind of just like glossed over, like you said.
It really is. So yeah, it is this scene. It's after Mulder wrongfoots Roach. He says, I got inside your head. Maybe you got inside mine. Yeah, it obviously isn't a significant flaw then, is it? In the sense that we're both saying, 10 out of 10. Fantastic episode. I think it's sold quite well by the performances. Do you know what I mean? That it's quite a fleeting moment, and because Duchovny and Noonan are so committed in the moment, you just kind of are willing to overlook it. That's how I see it, anyway.
I just like how subtle it's played because it makes it, the audience choice. Like, is it an X-File or is it not? Is Mulder just like having dreams and going crazy? Is Scully right? Is this just his subconscious? Is Roach just a really good at like reading Mulder and like playing with him and like a modern magician who can just play off people? Like, is he just doing that to Mulder, or is it actual an X-File? Like, I like the fact that it's kind of open-ended and you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah, and also the episode, again, it changes gears really well. So we've gone from like the initial investigation into the Samantha stuff, and now we know that it's not Samantha, but we're into this kind of rescue mission, aren't we? That's also very gripping,
Mm-hmm. Well, we don't know that the last part is not Samantha, do we? I guess we know that it was the wrong house, but then there is also the part where he says, it's just location. I got the house wrong or something. So
yeah, but until the final scene, I think Scully says she's something like, whoever it is, it's not Samantha, but we will find her.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I think we sort of move on to this Caitlin thing, don't we? But so this stuff with finding the little girl. I mean, it's quite a brief investigation, admittedly, isn't it? Because there's the thing with Alice Road. Oh, there he is. It doesn't take long in terms of screen time, but really just move like a freight train. And the confrontation on the bus is really tense and exciting, which is Roach with a gun on the girl. And it is what you're saying, actually. There is the ambiguity, because he's asking Mulder, how sure are you that the final heart doesn't belong to Samantha?
Right.
But Mulder, of course, does shoot Roach dead. So, yeah, what did you make of that whole sequence?
I think that, capped the episode really nicely. I think it even almost made the entire episode for me when I watched the end and solidified it as one of my favorite X-Files episodes ever, because, first of all, I didn't see that coming at all, especially in an X-Files episode. Like, I mean, you can correct me, but I don't remember another episode where Mulder just shoots somebody like point blank like that. It was a very violent, startling ending to an episode that was so real and so lifelike that it just stood apart from other X-Files episodes to me. And the fact that he was trying so hard to get the information out of him, if it was Samantha or not, and then he had to shoot him to save this girl, and knowing that if he shoots him, they're never going to find out who the last heart goes to. That's, it's really dark, but it made a great episode. The fact that if he shoots him, he doesn't get the information, but he had to save the little girl, and he made the right choice. It just made the episode really real almost. It brought it home. It was really grounded. Yeah,
totally. So we get that final scene in the X-Files office, which is very touching as well, I think. So yeah, I think Scully says the missing girl isn't Samantha, but we'll find her, whoever she is. But as far as I can recall, I don't believe it is ever referred to in the series at all again. But anyway, a nice little embrace between the two as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it was when he at the very end when he puts the heart in the drawer and just shuts it. It's like, it gave me chills. It's like really sad. It's a really like sad, touching moment almost.
Yeah, there's a few X-Files episodes which I'm not generally that emotional a viewer, but this is one of them that makes me feel emotional. And the one where they finally wrap up the Samantha storyline, which is quite divisive in the fandom, but I really like it. I think it's really moving. What about the whole thing with Mulder and Scully then? So they have a nice little hug, or Mulder kind of hugs her stomach or whatever it is. And what do you think the best... I mean, this kind of era of the series seems like around about the best, the ideal Mulder and Scully for me. Before, they're having babies, having a baby and so on. This kind of era of the series is kind of the Mulder and Scully we think of in pop culture, I think.
Yeah, they've really hit their stride in season 4. They, they're not to anger the shippers. I don't remember where we got in their relationship up to this episode, but in just taking this episode on its own, they definitely seem like they love each other in like a very, I don't know if I want to say platonic, but there's no like overtly like romantic parts that I can see in this episode, and they just seem very close, and they can seem that they care about each other. And the fact that Mulder's had such a terrible ordeal throughout this entire episode, that that little hug at the end is a good. Mulder needs comfort, and Scully's there to give it to him, and I think it was very sweet.
Yeah, the term platonic is kind of a loaded one in X-Files fan circles.
I'm gonna get a bunch of angry emails.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. I think it is platonic in the truest sense of the word, in that it's very affectionate. It's intimate, but it's not romantic or sexual, I think is how I would say it.
And I think that would be the wrong, even if, I think that would be the wrong way to play the end of this episode, romantic or sexual. Like of course, that would cross a line. I think it's such a dark, serious moment for Mulder. I think all he needed was some love and comfort that is platonic.
Yeah, and I think that's a nice note to end this section of the podcast on. So yeah, in a moment we'll look through listener responses to this episode in the mailbag. All right, Ben, so just feel free to jump in if any of these points... a lot of them are very positive, and a lot of it's the stuff we've talked over already, but this is what the fans made of the episode anyway. So Michael Little said, "When I say I think Season 4 is the best season of The X-Files, it is because of episodes like this, or Home, or Demons, or Unruhe, or Leonard Betts." So, yeah, a good run of episodes in this season. And Michael says, "Paper Hearts is probably my favourite episode, and it's certainly David's finest hour as an actor on the show. It's the best episode to deal with Samantha, the best script by Vince Gilligan. David and Gillian are both in top form, and so is guest star Tom Noonan as the monstrous Roach. This was the year the show broke new ground in terms of exploring darkness and emotional pain. The best episode of the season. Unforgettable."
It's extremely memorable. This episode stands out to me. I would say, I think it's my favorite episode, my favorite X-Files episode.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this episode on this podcast. And for all the reasons we just specified, it got really serious and it got really dark, and it just, not to knock any X-Files episode, but just seem more real and more grounded than many other X-Files episodes. And I think that makes it unique, and that makes it stand out.
Great stuff. So let's just run through a couple more. So Chandru Ravindran said, "In my top 3 with Pusher and Warm Breath, absolutely seminal. This is David Duchovny's finest performance, and it's just heartbreaking. So many moments that cause me to tear up, and the music is maybe Mark Snow's best. The dream sequence music with its playful tone is classic, but shout out to the music that plays when Mulder is checking the skeleton and realizes it's not Samantha."
Yeah, I think, did Mark Snow get Emmy nominated for this episode?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure. Let's have a quick look. Yeah, well, it seems so. Nominated, so presumably didn't win. And there's a quote here, so this is on the Wikipedia page. So it was a different kind of texture for the show. Light magic, nothing terribly threatening. So yeah, in opposition, like we said, like you said, that compared to a lot of episodes, it's very grounded. And also compared to a lot of episodes, the music's quite distinct too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very different.
Yeah. What's it like then? So I can't actually remember if we discussed, when we spoke about Familiar, but just knowing that Mark Snow's there to kind of back you up and score your episode must be a nice feeling.
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's so fun to work with. We would talk over the phone and just kind of, I would just tell him about the episode, and he would give me, some ideas about what he wanted to do for music, and he's just a really good collaborator, and I would work with him anytime.
Yeah, great stuff. And then, so Chandru went on to say, "Also, this episode has one of my favourite Mulder-Scully conversations. When Mulder asks her point blank, 'Scully, do you think my sister was abducted by aliens? Have you ever believed that?' No? Then what do you think happened to her?" Brilliant writing and acting. And yeah, as we already kind of said about that scene. Karen McKenna said, "One of my all-time favourites, a great monster of the week that plays with elements of the mythology in a new and interesting way. A great, emotionally charged exploration of Mulder's character with a strong, supportive, understanding Scully and a villain who's chilling in just how average and nonchalant he is on the surface. Everything about this episode is amazing, from the acting to the music to the playful yet haunting visuals. Absolutely love it." Let's see, Tony Black said, "It's a gem, mainly because it genuinely makes you question the entire Samantha journey thus far, and plausibly suggests her disappearance is far more mundane and prosaic than the elaborate mythology would have us believe."
Yeah, I agree with all these comments.
Yeah, this thing about the elaborate mythology, and by contrast, this would have made a nice explanation. It's tough, I think, because they had to continue the mythology and keep introducing new elements, isn't it? So
yeah, it's one of those weird episodes where I guess it's technically is a mythology episode, but not real. Like, you don't need to see this episode if you're just watching the mythology episodes. Like, they never refer back to this episode, do they? I don't think so.
Not really. I suppose it depends whether you see the mythology as being about the conspiracy or the characters more, isn't it? Because you'd be tempted to chuck it in if you were watching all the Samantha episodes, of course.
Right.
But yeah, and Tony says it also really continues the trend of individual writers like Vince Gilligan marking out their own episodes as indicative of their own style. He's a master at weaving the ordinary with the terrifying, and that's John Lee Roach, a Thomas Harris variant very much in tune with Gilligan's litany of detached, controlling men Gilligan finds the extraordinary often for bad in their profound ordinariness. If he hadn't written Pusher, this would be Gilligan's top X-Files masterpiece. And yeah, I mean, you can see what Tony's saying, I think, with characters like Walter White in Breaking Bad, and some of his other X-Files antagonists, that it is these things where they're ordinary men with delusions of grandeur or whatever. So I think he's definitely right there, isn't he?
Yeah.
And also this thing about the individual writers. I mean, we kind of talked about this a little last time. I guess that goes to the top, doesn't it, with Chris Carter, that he enabled that and was happy for people to, crack on with their own scripts and put their own signature on things, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. He lets you run with it, and then if there's problems, you either come back to him and you guys go through the whole story together and he helps you out, or there was other writers on the show. Was this season 4 during season 1 of Millennium, I think? Because
That's
I think
right,
Chris was split between a couple shows during this season. So I think some of the more veteran writers, were able to run with their own stuff. I'm not sure how that worked in season 4, but he really does enable writers to do their own thing, which is very rare. And I think it's a great thing that a lot of shows should do more of. But it's easier in the procedural type show than it would be in a serialized show. Because in a serialized show, you kind of want one voice throughout every episode,
Yeah. It's just kind of mind-boggling to think, like you say, Millennium, but also they're sort of starting to think about the X-Files film, the first film at this point. And,
right. Yeah. I don't know how he did it. It's a lot to juggle.
Yeah, he had very capable people like Frank Spotnitz and Howard Gordon still on the series at this point, helping him out. I suppose that helps. Morgan and Wong around as well. So a few more comments. So Montgomery Scott said, "This is one of the few episodes that genuinely scared me. I guess because it's something real. I mean, besides the dream connection part." Yeah, well, we discussed that. "And I really loved the way David acted," she says. "I think the touch with the laser drawings was also a nice way to sort of expand on that dreamlike feeling."
The laser pointer was really the only thing in this episode that, it's fine because it's like was this late 90s or early? I guess it was late 90s.
96, yeah.
96. That seemed a little dated, the laser pointer thing. What did you think about it?
You mean because I don't know if it was
just the effect of having a laser pointer. Like, I don't think anyone would do that nowadays. I guess laser pointers were kind of new back then, weren't they?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think this was about the time they were coming in. Yeah. How do you think it would be done now then? Like, what do you think would be a way to do it?
Well, they'd probably do some crazy dream thing with CGI now. It'd be totally different nowadays. Yeah. Like, I'm just trying to imagine how someone would approach this episode now, and they would do some weird CGI dream sequence probably. It's kind of nice and novel the way they did it, but it did seem the laser pointer thing is the only thing in this episode. Like, if this episode were to air today, I think it could work. That's another thing I love about this episode is, a lot of the X-Files episodes are nostalgic and great because, like, the effects look dated but perfectly dated. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everything in this episode could air today, and I would believe that it was like shot today. For the most part, besides the hairstyles and dress and everything.
Yeah.
But everything works like perfectly. It holds up very well. But the only thing that bugged me a little bit is that laser pointer. It's a little outdated, I think.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I guess I'd never thought of it in those terms because I didn't see this in 96. I would have seen it. We used to have to wait like a few months in the UK to get the episodes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would have kind of grown up with that laser pointer if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's a fair point. Just a couple more comments then before we wrap up. So Zach Moore said, top 10 episode, maybe. It's quite a feat for a series in its 4th season to have you legitimately question the mythology of the series. Samantha's abduction was set up from the very first episode as Mulder's catalyst, his reason that he does what he does. Considering how the true story of what happened to Samantha eventually turned out, I would have preferred they'd left things here, to be honest, which is an interesting point. And Zach said, the episode's only shortcoming is the mental connection between Mulder and Roach. I don't know what kind of explanation would have satisfied me, but certainly not the lame attempt at one they gave us. But the rest of the episode is so good, I give it a pass.
Yeah, I can see where someone could come at it like that, but that's one of the reasons I kind of liked the episode, was that they left it a little ambiguous.
Yeah, and that is very X-Files, I think, that there are these elements that aren't always paid off or resolved in a nice way, in a way that's kind of food for thought, or it provokes further discussion, which is good. And just the last comment from Pamela Stafford, who said, one of my absolute favourites, although the explanation of the paranormal aspect is a little weak. Great to see Mulder's approach as a profiler, and David does such a great job, and you've got to love the basketball shot. yeah, good stuff.
Also, do you ever think about what if Mulder missed that basketball shot? Would they just end the episode? What did he say? I'll tell you everything I know if you could sink this from the free throw line or something.
Well, that's right. There's actually an interesting comment there, isn't there? Which is when Mulder sinks the shot and Roach says, you trust a child molester.
Right. But just the fact that Mulder was like, all right, I'll shoot it. Like, what if he missed?
But what I was going to say is they're actually quite coy. I don't think they reference Roach's sexual aspect to his crimes elsewhere, do they? I guess that might have been a network thing, you can't be too
probably
specific. Yeah.
I like that moment in the episode though when he gets the hearts and he tries to open them and they tell him he's not allowed to open them and touch them. It shows, they kind of hint at his
that's as far as they go. Yeah.
Disgusting sexual devious nature there.
And in terms of what you're saying about the basketball thing, I mean, yeah, this season I think there's another episode where Mulder he goes to a bowling alley and he takes a shot and he gets a strike, so
of course
any opportunity to showcase David Duchovny's sporting prowess at this point in time, they take it. Yeah, all right, Ben. So yeah, absolute pleasure to talk to you again.
Yeah, for sure.
And, tell us about this comic book then that you mentioned at the outset of the episode.
Yeah, so I got it's dark historical revisionism from the time of Jesus, so it's a very irreverent, mature theme comic book featuring the disciples as monster hunters and Judas as the first vampire and Lazarus as kind of the first zombie. There's probably going to be a lot of conservative Christians there, and I write me hate mail, but it's going to be really fun to write. We're going to launch a Kickstarter in October of this year, and if you want to follow for updates, let me get that real quick. You follow on Twitter at SOG_comic, SOG_comic, and it's called Sons of God. So yeah, that's something I'm working on right now. We have a great artist, we have a great colorist, a whole team putting this thing together, and we'll be launching that on Kickstarter in October.
Great stuff. So I guess comic books, you don't have to worry about as much about logistics and budgets and censors and things so much. You can just let your imagination run wild. Is that right?
Kind of. There are definite budgets. I gotta pay a bunch of people to do the art, but self-publishing, you do have more options about what you can do rather than working with a traditional publisher. And with a controversial subject like this, I think we're better served self-publishing it. But it's my very first comic book, and I'm very excited to get it out to everybody. The art looks fantastic. There's a little preview on Twitter if you guys want to see it, featuring a bunch of demons that look really, really good. It's colored very well. And then if you guys want to follow me, it's at Ben Van Allen, BenVanallen, and that's where you can find me.
Great stuff, Ben. Yeah, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out for your comic book. It sounds like a great idea and a fascinating project. So yeah, best of luck with that. And listeners, find us in all the usual places online. Tony will be along in a minute to tell you all about that. Always remember, guys, until next time, trust no one.
The Xcast, an X-Files podcast, is produced and presented by Tony Black. alongside a dedicated group of podcasters and X-Files fans. You can find us on Twitter at The Xcast, and on Facebook if you type in The Xcast, or at our group X-Files Basement, an Xcast podcast fan group, where you can continue the discussion about all things Mulder and Scully. If you want to support The Xcast further, you can now subscribe and become a patron of the show on Patreon. On Google, just type patreon.com/The Xcast. That's Patreon. You'll see all of our tiers, subscription options and perks, which include early access to episodes, bonus content such as commentaries on X-Files episodes, access to a patron chat zone, and even appearing on one of our patron roundtable discussions. We would appreciate any support you can give the show, so just go to patreon.com/The Xcast to find out more. Our title music is provided courtesy of Will A, who you can find on Twitter at IamWillAYE.